Welcome back, everyone. We would now like to welcome all of our participants back to our last plenary for today, the NextGen, Changing the Business Profile of the Future, where we will actually have a chat with outstanding Filipinos who were named into the prestigious Forbes 30 Under 30 Asia 2021 list. Please welcome our speakers. Today, we are joined by co-founder of Invested, Ms. Carmina Bayombong. Invested is a globally awarded impact business that has helped thousands of low-income Filipino youth increase their income and navigate success in a fast-changing world. Joining us here today as well, co-founder and CEO of Eskwelabs, Ms. Angela Chen. She graduated from the University of Toronto with a BCom in Finance and Economics with distinctions and is a chartered alternative investment analyst. Joining us today, we have founder of Virtualahan, Mr. Ryan GERSAVA. He was the first Filipino to be awarded with the Inspired Leadership Award, previously given to Melinda Gates and Sir Richard Branson. Joining us as well, we have the resident physician of Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, Dr. Edward Christopher Dee. He's a graduate of Xavier School, completed his undergraduate degree in molecular biophysics and biochemistry at Yale, and completed his medical degree at Harvard. And finally, we have the co-founder of Youth Engaged in Wetlands, Mr. GAB Mejia. He is a National Geographic Explorer, a 2019 Jackson Wild Media Lab Fellow, and a Nikon Ambassador. Moderating this exceptional panel that we have here today, we have the president of Synerbyte Limited. Please welcome Mr. Cliff M. EALA.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back. Plenary session. How is everyone?
Good.
So, my name is Cliff EALA, and it's been an amazing day with lots of lessons and inspiring stories about the next gen leadership. So, to cap it off, we're going to have this amazing crew, the Forbes Asia 30 Under 30 crew. I met with these guys in prep for this, and these guys are awesome. So for the audience, get ready to be inspired. To put some structure into the session, I'm going to ask each one to give a 5-minute talk about who they are and what they do, and that'll frame the discussion later on. And by the way, a special thanks to Chris. We thought you wouldn't make it. We heard that there was a stroke code at the hospital. So and it's 2:00 in the morning there, right? So
3:20.
3:20. So thanks for making it. So let's start off with the 5-minute talks for each. Let's have Ryan first. Ryan.
Yes, daghang salamat, Cliff. Maayong hapon sa atong tanan. Yes, NextGen CEO, I believe, is someone who is intentional and committed in delivering positive impact and is willing to do what is necessary versus what is convenient to achieve it. And I believe that's what it means and what it is to become true stewards of the future. You know, April of last year, the Philippines experienced the highest unemployment rate in our country's history at 17.6%, or 7.2 million Filipinos unemployed. But this reality is not new to our communities of persons with disability, single mothers, out-of-school youth, persons inside the jail, and in other disadvantaged groups. Globally, the social exclusion from the workplace of persons with disabilities alone deprives societies of an estimated 1.3 to 1.9 trillion US dollars in annual loss in GDP, according to a report from the International Labor Organization. This economic inactivity puts them at a greater risk of insufficient social protection, which is key to reducing extreme poverty. I personally experienced this firsthand in 2015, which led me to starting my company. And since nobody decided to hire me because of my chronic conditions, I decided to hire myself. and I started Virtualahan instead, an impact-driven company that is breaking down employment barriers for persons with disabilities and other excluded communities using an impact formula that addresses the systemic root causes of employment discrimination in the Philippines, which is one, the inaccessible education system that fails to prepare talents with disabilities for competitive employment, and outdated labor practices, which discriminates people from jobs and deprives employers from the fruits of having truly diverse talent. In a climate of economic and political uncertainty, the protection of the most vulnerable members of our society assumes greater importance. The COVID-19 pandemic made us see the equalizing power of technology, but as well as the great divide in our society. This crisis made us look deeper into our sense of humanity, but also exposes what we truly want and what we truly lack. The quest for meaning and purpose is what driving our companies, our people, and in our society today. And this new evolving social contract tells us that unless we truly invest in the beauty of human experience through diversity and inclusion, we will become less and less relevant. A next-gen leader, according to our agents of change, moving towards the same direction. And my hope is that that direction leads us to building the future of work that leaves no one behind. Daghang salamat.
Thank you, Ryan. That was Ryan GERSAVA from Virtualahan. Now let's have Carmina Bayombong. Her nickname is Carbs from
Yes.
Invested. Take it away, Carbs.
Okay, thanks, Cliff. Hi, everyone. Hope you're still up having coffee. All right, so I'm Carmina, the CEO and co-founder of Invested. My sound is okay? Okay.
Yes,
so
yes.
I'll start with telling you the story about Chen. This is Chen. He and his sibling here are supported solely by their single mother, who earns less than $3 per day as a janitress. So due to poverty, Chen had to drop out of college to work full-time, giving up his dream of becoming a lawyer. Unfortunately, no matter how hard Chen worked, he couldn't get a salary above minimum wage. And this is because, as you all probably know, as employers, 76% of employers in the Philippines require a degree to pay above minimum wage. And so for Chen to get a degree and move up in life, he would have to earn enough money for tuition and get the time and resources to do so. So there's actually 9 million people like Chen here in the Philippines and 500 million more in the developing world. So my journey as a NextGen CEO is actually my co-founder and I responded to this problem in 2016 by creating Invested as one of the first known providers of student loans in Asia. So our vision is a world where every young dreamer has no barriers to success. And to make this vision a reality, we created this model for youth success, which provides the 3 C's. We provide loans to students for their education and upskilling, which is packaged with coaching that teaches 3 skill sets, and also a supportive community that provides social-emotional support for them. Our business model essentially is our student loan program, wherein we borrow low cost and long-term capital to provide affordable loans to students and leave room for profit. So to make student loans sustainable and scalable, we use algorithms to scale our program and also technology to do so. So, when I was building Invested with this crazy idea to lend to students and then coach them, coach thousands at scale, there were a lot of non-believers, but we're proud to have achieved a lot of traction. We've raised 125 million funding to date, and we've also helped thousands of students. So I want to share, to close, my 3 NextGen CEO philosophies that I learned along my journey. Number 1, I think, is that solving poverty creates immense value for both society and shareholders. I think in the Philippines, we usually have this dichotomy that if you want to be mission-driven, you can't profit. And if you want to profit, you also can't have a mission. So I'm a believer that both are possible, and like I've also made it my mission to like popularize this concept here in the Philippines with what I do at Invested. Second is like solving poverty is not cheap. So another one of my philosophies as a next gen CEO working on a social cause is that you need the best talent to solve poverty, which requires, typical misconception also that there should be less money coming in to social enterprises, but I actually believe the opposite. And then lastly, the only way to stay competitive is to build an innovative company culture. I think that in our fast changing world, this is really a trend that we're seeing, and our team at Invested is very intentional on. If you like, there's really nothing else that will secure your company today. So you need to be able to like develop products within weeks, launch it, be very customer centric, and really build that innovative company culture. So to close, I just want to share like what happened to Chen. Chen actually recently graduated from college with an invested loan and coaching, and he's now able to fund also his brother who will enter college in a few years. So Chen's story is truly a beautiful one, and I think that my purpose to be like a next gen CEO was also being part of that story. And yeah, look forward to speaking with everyone later. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Carmina.
All right.
Next up, we have Chris Dee, who's a molecular biologist from Yale and is currently doing his residency in med school at Harvard. Chris?
Thank you, everyone. Thanks very much for the opportunity to speak with you and to share my thoughts on what it means to be the good next generation CEO and to be the steward of the future. Of course, I have to caveat that I'm a physician and a cancer researcher first and foremost. And so it is with that lens that I view what I hope businesses will look like in the future. In particular, I will share perspectives from the world of cancer research and also from the COVID pandemic more broadly, which demonstrates how intimately intertwined medicine, society, and business are. The first point I want to make is with regard to the importance of data in helping us to guide the decisions that we make, whether in health, policy, or business. The pandemic has shown us that reliance on data and science can help define the steps forward as we work our way out of the pandemic. We have also seen instances in which making decisions without considering the data can have dire consequences for health and the economy. In contrast, we have also seen instances in which cutting-edge technology and commitment to science can lead to the development of significantly effective vaccines in a relatively short amount of time. This is old news in the much smaller microcosm of cancer within medicine, where to the best of our abilities, each decision that we make is ideally driven by research. Commitment to science continues to drive our ability to extend time and improve quality time for patients. I think the same applies to the businesses in the Philippines moving forward. There's much to be said for incorporating data and research as we steer the directions for the future. Further efforts are needed to be taken to involve research and reason as we define the next steps in business and policy, especially cognizant of the great ramifications our choices in this room have for our country. We need to collect, analyze, and apply data, and to engender a data-driven culture that informs decision-making at every level. Taken a step further, I think it's important in the Philippines that we are open to new technologies that are developed locally and elsewhere, and that we are open to adopting them, whether in data science, medicine, what have you, and adapting them for the Filipino. I think a good next generation CEO would welcome innovations outside her or his field or comfort zone, and to see what can be incorporated moving forward. The second point that I want to make is the importance of openness to globalization. We are at a time where the rise of nationalism threatens global exchange of goods and ideas. But the pandemic has shown us the intimate ways in which nation states and globalized cities are so heavily intertwined. An infection that started out in a food market in Wuhan clearly has severe ramifications for the economy in Manila. Borrowing from my experience in cancer research, the best developments occur where there is international collaboration that is welcoming of ideas from all over the world. Technology that grows out of a lab in Beijing, for example, can be adopted by a biotech company in Tel Aviv, tested at Sloan Kettering here in New York, and used to help patients in Manila. It is these kinds of collaborations that drive the future. I think a good next generation CEO should be open to collaborations with people outside their usual locus of control. Leadership should welcome lessons from other cities and other countries, and should be open to partnerships that span the globe. We are fortunate beneficiaries of improved travel and connectivity in the 21st century. The pandemic has shown us how slowing down these things can hamper progress. Therefore, it behooves us to learn from this and to make the most of the interconnectedness of the world. The last point I would like to make is about equity. The global political climate has demonstrated that the world is unequal and that these inequities, whether in the form of classism, casteism, or racism, are rampant, with tangible consequences for people's ability to live and to prosper. The pandemic has shown us, for example, that the persistence of residual infections in populations that have poor access to vaccination and healthcare can result in reservoirs that endanger everybody else. In oncology, data are beginning to demonstrate that socioeconomic disparities in cancer outcomes can actually be mitigated when people are given opportunities to access equitable care. Anybody who has had the privilege to learn from a lot of the public hospitals in the Philippines likely understands how inequity hampers people's ability to live. In contrast, we are beginning to learn that efforts to promote equity, whether in access to vaccination or cancer care, can help promote prosperity of the group as a whole. Equitable distribution of vaccines is an almost self-evident example, but even within oncology, incorporating local and global diversity in clinical trials can only serve to improve the generalizability of every research finding. Now, a good next generation CEO can learn from these examples. Equity can come in the form of finding the balance between paying employees such that they are able to work without worrying about making ends meet versus the company's productivity and bottom line. Livable wages can improve employee productivity. Improved benefits can likely improve people's satisfaction and company loyalty. Additionally, companies need to actively make an effort to incorporate diverse perspectives amidst their leadership and focus on the very tangible benefits of incorporating many voices. So just to reiterate these three things: 1, fostering a data-driven culture; 2, openness to globalization; and 3, commitment to improving equity, especially for employees. I think these are crucial as we move into and play an active hand in defining the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Next up, we have GAB Mejia.
Yeah, thank you so much, Cliff. My name is Gab, and honestly, I don't know. I'm not really like the CEO, but I do have co-founded the Youth Engaged in Wetlands, so which is the international youth network that advocates for the conservation of wetlands around the world. But specifically, the work that I've been doing is really on the communications and really pushing the power of storytelling, of arts, photography, journalism, and documentary in the fields of science, communication, and of course environmental activism and conservation work in protecting the environment, the Philippines from especially with the effects of the climate crisis, the effects of environmental destruction, habitat destruction, and biodiversity loss. And I guess truly one of the most needed things that we have right now in society in the Philippines is really the growing disconnect that we have from our different cultures and nature, of how we are lacking this sense of diversity and acceptance, and that we need to show and relate to people of the issues that we're facing, of showing the hard facts and truths that a lot of people need to be aware about. Because in truth, we all live in these bubbles, and it's a privilege to even be able to be speaking in front of you here, of even being able to speak through Zoom, where not a lot of people have the accessibility or the means to be able to really watch and learn from all of the experiences and shared knowledge that we have from each of the speakers and panelists. And I guess this is the truth in speaking of how we as great communicators of being the next gen CEO is really about being able to show the truths and the nuances, the different problems and issues that we're facing, not just in the environment, but as well as, in achieving social justice and in achieving environmental justice. There's a big gap between, there's a big gap with everything that's happening, wherein not a lot of people are really aware, or people are trying to be playing ignorant despite knowing the issues and atrocities that they're doing in society. And I guess the real role of storytelling is to be able to, to show the truth, to show how we, I guess, as the next generation, to be able to not just carry the burden of these stories, but as well as to pave the solutions of how we can fix these environmental issues, these environmental problems that we're facing. So through the stories, through the photographs that we do for National Geographic, for CNN, for other international organizations, we are pushing for lobbying, for policy making, and really making sure that the stories that we tell are heard by the people that needs to hear them, by our leaders, by our business leaders, by our institutions, even international governments when contracting parties to the Conference of the Parties, to COPs, the United Nations, and all of these avenues and platforms that we have. I guess as a role of the next steward of the future is really by being able to see that being an empathetic storyteller, of being compassionate, more as an artist as well, of being able to relate what you create, that makes sure that people would be able to understand what you're trying to do, what you're trying to say, and what you're trying to change. And it's really about the impact-driven mission that we do, not just in our organization, but as well as the individual advocacies that we have as an environmentalist, as a photographer, as an artist, to create the impacts. And it can go in many ways through maybe fundraising for livelihoods, donating, creating exhibits and galleries to be able to provide funding for those marginalized communities, those disempowered communities, like our wildlife rangers, our forest rangers. Because the Philippines is one of the deadliest countries for environmental defenders. And it's something, these are the truths that we need to face, and how we can actually empower these environmentalists and environmental defenders by amplifying their voices through the stories that we tell. And, we as a youth, in the lens of the youth, I guess the life as a youth right now is that we just hope that we're not supposed to be taking the brunt of all the issues that we're facing in society. That we hope to share that same privilege as the older generations that came before us, to have that same, I guess, less trauma or whatever that is, to be able to really push to be able to live a sustainable life, and a life that has justice, that has meaning, and has purpose as well, through the things that we create and the way our lives are moving forward. Because sometimes I even hope that maybe one day we shouldn't even be doing this kind of work, of going to the front lines, of dealing with all the trauma to see the effects of environmental changes happening around us. And I'm just hoping and dreaming of maybe that one day we can all share that future that everyone deserves around here. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Gab. And last we have Angela Chen, Eskwelabs.
Oh, hi, Cliff. I think I actually prepared a video because I thought I would be on the road and the internet wouldn't be good. So I think on the back end, we'll just start to play that video. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Angela Chen, the co-founder and CEO of Eskwelabs. We're a mission-driven startup upskilling workers in data science and data analytics skills. First of all, thank you for inviting me to the Management Association of the Philippines NextGen conference. The discussion topic is close to my heart and something I've thought about for the majority of my career. I think we're in dire need of spaces where those working in business can explore the relationships between our personal values and our working lives, and I see this conference as a great opportunity for that. I first came to think critically about the role of business to create impact as a university student studying finance in the years after the 2008 credit crisis. Like many of my peers, that experience shaped my outlook on the importance of forging a meaningful career. In the same way, I believe this generation of young people, the Gen Zs, the lockdown generation, will have their career outlooks and prospects fundamentally changed by the COVID-19 pandemic. While our parents and grandparents lived by a model of learn, earn, return, or in other words, learn for the first 20 years of your life, earn for the next 20 to 30 years, and finally, when you're about 50, start to think about giving back to your community. Young people today are disrupting a lot of things, including this model of life. Our attitude is captured by this quote from Marina Keegan. The world has become more digital around us, and that has shaped our relationship with what we want to achieve in our careers. We want to have it all at the same time. We want to learn, earn, and return through work, which we don't want to just see as a job, but as a fulfilling vocation. Or in the words of Aristotle, this generation wants to believe where the needs of the world and our talents cross, there lies our vocation. So now let me tell you a bit about Eskwelabs and how we're building the company aligned with these values. Eskwelabs was founded on one core belief, that those with data skills will succeed in the future of work. During the pandemic, what your job was affected how you and your family were impacted. Here we're contrasting two personas created based on data from JobStreet on the most and the least affected worker during the pandemic in 2020. Tech workers were resilient as compared to those who worked in traditional service sectors. But already before the pandemic, 75% of companies reported difficulty in hiring talent with digital skills, and we're expecting that to get worse as companies speed up their digital transformation. So what are the solutions that a worker has to improve their skills? They could try a self-paced online course like Coursera, or try to become a developer through coding bootcamps. While the former has low completion rates of less than 3% on average, the latter has a high price tag and a high barrier to entry for those not coming from a STEM background. The problem Eskwelabs is solving is to democratize exciting opportunities in the digital economy through innovating technical vocational education for 21st century jobs. We focus on data analytics and data science because they're accessible for workers from different backgrounds. Data skills empower them to ask the right questions, communicate with evidence, and make informed decisions. And unlike existing alternatives, we focus on active, online, and cohort-based learning to lower the cost compared to traditional education, but to improve the outcomes and the experience as compared to self-paced learning. Today, the growth of the company is linked to the size of our impact, and the quality of education affects the outcome of our learners. So we've started with the job outcomes in mind. We partnered with more than 120 companies across industries to hire upskillers in data. And here you can see our past cohort data, which shows that 90% of students are placed within 90 days, where they experience on average a 50% increase in salary. Today, our graduates work in large companies and innovative ones. They also conduct data for good projects and use their new skills not just to improve their own livelihoods, but also their communities. Eskwelabs students and our team embody the millennial idea of attempting learn, earn, and return at the same time. If these ideas resonate with you, or you'd like to talk to us about our data talent partnerships, feel free to reach out to me here. I look forward to the panel discussion later. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. Well, thank you everyone for those 5-minute introductions about yourselves and what you do. Let's start off the discussion now. I wanted to take a look a little bit on the strategy or the approach or the way you view the idea of the conflict between positive social impact and profit. Many people say there is a conflict, even if not always. How do you manage that conflict, if ever? And how do you decide on the trade-offs you need to make in your own companies and in your work? And that's for anyone who wants to take it.
Okay, I can probably start because I love answering this question. I guess I start off with coming to the terms that it's not black and white. It's not like it's more of a spectrum. So in terms of variables, it's like it's continuous. It's not binary. Okay, I'm getting nerdy here. So anyway, so and then it has a couple of dimensions, right? It's not black and white. So I think making decisions, it's really what my process for that is. What is our vision, mission? What do we need? What is the step we need to take, and where do we need to be that will get us the closest there in the fastest way possible? And then whatever that is, right? So for in the terms of invested, we want to fund all disadvantaged students who need education funding and coaching. And what we need to do there is we had to solve the risk problem in student loans. It was super clear because there's so much capital out there. And then so for us to do that, that was the question: what would we need to hit in terms of targets, right? And we would just like need to lend to like 1,000 students, achieve a repayment rate of this much, and then so it kind of falls from there. So yeah, I go through that process, and then more of like balance the scale and depth of impact, and then make that decision in our team. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Interesting.
want to jump on that and almost like challenge this idea, Cliff. I know like the starting position is that they are in conflict, right? But I think with what I was sharing, I guess, about the mental models of this generation, and I guess everybody here, maybe Gab is a bit younger. Gab is probably in Gen Z. We're in the millennials. But just in general, I would just say, yeah, for the sake of this younger generation, is maybe our starting point is not that they're in conflict with each other. Our starting point is actually that businesses or organizations are built to solve a problem. That's what people pay us for. And the purpose of the business is to solve the problem. And when you solve the problem and when you solve it for a lot of people, you will be rewarded by the market. You'll also be able to create a lot of impact by solving that problem. And so that's, I think, the starting point of this generation of really thinking of the issue from that angle of not either or, but the profit as a means to the end of solving the problem, rather than the profit being the end in itself, right? Which I think, yeah, most of us that have gone through business school are taught like the idea of like the only responsibility you have is to the stakeholders, and that's kind of what you're optimizing for. I think with what everyone here is kind of talking about is that our starting point is different. We're trying to optimize for scaling the impact that we would be able to have. Our starting point is optimizing for solving the problem.
I want to build on
Go ahead, Ryan.
Yes, what Carbs and Angela said. And I think we can all learn from the twin track approach, which originated in the disability community in delivering impact, and that is through mainstreaming and then targeting. And I think having a deep understanding of the problem that you want to solve can help you prioritize that and develop a business model around it to scale what you are doing. And it's not even rocket science. In our case, there are employers that want to employ persons with disability, but are paying a lot of money to source them. And we have students with disability who doesn't have the means to go to school, but have this determination. And we just match them using cross-subsidy and paid-forward model. And it makes the company sustainable since we started it over half a decade ago. So yeah, I think we can all learn from that.
Anything else to add?
Did we succeed in changing your mind, Cliff?
No,
no, and I think it's, I mean, just to add, like it's sort of related to what Angela said also. It's really what fits your company's objective. I mean, there's multiple models that you can use. There really are like advocacies that really require nonprofit model, to be honest. And I understand, like, for example, in the environment, like a nonprofit model is really like much more preferred usually in environmental advocacies. But yeah, it goes back to, like, if you think about profits, that trade-off, right? It also begs the question of who are your shareholders? If your shareholders are intentional about impact, that trade-off is actually not a trade-off for them. It's about them putting a premium on impact. So if they were to make this much on a fully commercial, non-mission driven model, and they make this much on a mission driven model, they don't see it as a loss because the shareholders are put a premium on impact, and that makes that difference. So, like, I guess that's what I would also like emphasize. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, Angela said that you fulfill a service and the market rewards you. So the problem with that is that the market is not efficient, and the stronger players in the market end up becoming stronger and stronger, and the weaker become weaker and weaker. So, but she added later on that profit is a means to an end. It's a tool for something else. So, and that goes back to the idea of what value is. Is value just profitability, or there's something else we're referring to when we say value. Like you say, mission driven, purpose, social impact, or in the case of Virtualahan,
Yeah.
getting the people with disabilities to gainful employment. So, or raising awareness about the environmental problems. So, yeah, I think value, the concept of value here is changing, and we need to start with that. I'll move on to a next question. How can technology be harnessed for the way you operate in your fields, respective fields today? And maybe Chris in healthcare and Gab in his field.
I'm happy to take that question. I am, primarily an oncologist and cancer researcher, and our field is driven by technology every single day. Some examples are the now old drugs that we call immunotherapies that literally harness the immune system to kill tumors. In my field of radiation oncology, we use super fine beams to target cancers all over the body so that we can treat people without needing invasive surgery, or at least in complement to surgery and chemotherapy. But I think a less appreciated part of medicine and science is data science and how we're able to harness the seas of data that we generate in healthcare and what have you to solve problems for the future. What's an example? If you look, for example, at my area of research, prostate cancer, people are able to use the millions of images that we have of patients' prostates to create artificial intelligence driven algorithms to contour and design the radiation beams. Now that's the gold standard that we're all going for. But at the same time, can data science be driven to improve the systems that allow people to access care? Can data science be used to make healthcare delivery systems more efficient in countries like the Philippines? I think those are all applications of technology or data science kind of in my field.
Yeah, that's exactly the type of project I was mentioning, Cliff, around our students. They may go into the industry and actually work for a logistics company, let's say, that is trying to improve last mile delivery. The same algorithms that they're using in that company could also be used in an impact context. And that right now, that skill is being gated from some of these employees, maybe in government or in NGOs, right, to actually use, let's say, some of the most cutting edge technologies that already exist, have been, things that Chris are working on, bringing them actually to different applications, like let's say in the environment space, right, where the lack of data, for instance, has stifled a lot of additional work and policy that could happen. So it's maybe bring together like the technology that already exists. It's kind of what Carps was saying, like capital already exists. We just need to mobilize that. In the same way, it's like these technologies also exist for companies. Now we just need to look for other applications of them in the impact context. And for us, I think we see the link of that being the people who are driven by their own personal values. Like one of the things that you said around values is this difference between what is valuable to a company and what is personal valuable to us. What are our human values? What are the things that we actually value? We know that the people who are working in these spaces, they personally value a clean air, good environment, working infrastructure, democracy. These are the things that we value. So leveraging the skills of the people who are maybe, building these cutting edge technologies, and then, having them borrow, lend, whatnot, their skills there is one of the ways I think with the work that we're doing at Eskwelabs have been able to translate those graduates into the spaces where it's lacking, that type of talent.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I have a question on this one's for Gab. You're a national geographic explorer and photographer. What's the role of photography and art? You alluded to this a little bit earlier. What's the role of photography and art in building a sustainable and socially responsible future? And as part of the community in photography and art, what are the challenges you guys face in this field and the kind of support that you need?
Yeah, I think, specifically now, even everyone is so connected in a way. They have social media, everybody consumes art, photos. You scroll on Instagram, you scroll on Facebook, you have TikTok, you have YouTube, and everything that is content in a way. And it could be so impactful in a way of how it can create polarization, or like in a way, the information that we consume can be different. The hard facts that we consume for each of us, each of our feeds are basically different Wikipedia sites. Or imagine like an elephant would be a different kind of elephant for another person, right? And the way that art can be powerful is because it can be able to relate and translate whatever we see online, to make sure, especially for journalism, I guess, and documentary practice, to be able to show that these are the scientific facts, these are the data, these are the realities that are happening, the lives and families that we see. And it could be so powerful in a way because people would be able to relate or listen and have an empathetic understanding of what's happening around them, the environmental issues that they're facing, from climate crisis, which is so complex. Because art in a way is like a universal language, especially photography, I guess. You see a photograph of, for example, a person starving, or a person from the super affected by the super typhoons, and these tools could be, this photos, the stories could be used. So for one example is like one of the projects that we did, I think in last year, October, when one of the tamaraw, which is the last endangered tamaraw that died, our critically endangered tamaraw, died in October 2020 during the pandemic, and livelihoods of the tamaraw rangers or wildlife rangers were almost at risk. They would have been fired or kicked out. But because of the stories that we tell, we told the stories of the tamaraw rangers, the individual lives and families that they have, and the importance of biodiversity, of protecting ecosystems, of protecting the environment in Mindoro and how it relates to everyone. It was really like a whole community really pitched in and was able to raise about, I think, about 32,000 US dollars, which is about 1.15 million pesos, to secure the livelihoods of these rangers and the disempowered communities. So even just through photographs, through storytelling, could really drive social good in the way that you shift the narratives to focus on these people who need it the most, who needs to hear these stories.
Oh, Carmina is chatting and he's saying, Gab, you should research rhino bonds.
Yeah.
You're looking at it from a finance perspective now.
Yeah. There's like social impact bonds now for these causes where, there's really a lot of investors involved, and the return is based on. So, for example, these rhino bonds, it's like a project to increase the population of these rhinos, and based on like levels of increases of the population, that's the returns that the investors get. So and yeah, it's all structured well, everything. So yeah, I think like there's a lot of movements in terms of really like doing good across all industries. Yeah.
Oh, that's super cool, guys. I'll definitely research on that. That could be used, maybe tamaraw bonds or Philippine eagle bonds, right?
Yeah.
I'd like to go back quickly to Ryan, because your feed was a bit choppy earlier, and when you started talking, I didn't catch that much, and then maybe the audience didn't catch that much, and so Virtualahan does training for people with disability. So are you crazy? I mean, that's what's the business model behind that, and how are you going to get persons with disability into the corporate world? So can you share some of that?
It's very related to your previous question as well, Cliff. Like, in a traditional classroom, it's impossible for you to bring in a person with autism, a person who is blind, a person who is deaf, a person who is quadriplegic in a certain learning environment. But you use the equalizing power of technology, and then you make it possible. It's also challenging in the Philippines, considering our transportation system and our infrastructure are not necessarily accessible. But the COVID-19 pandemic opened the idea of a lot of companies that remote work is possible, and not just possible, it's actually effective. And we've been championing that since 2015. by bringing in people that are investing towards diverse talents. And we work with companies like Microsoft, like Accenture, Fortune 500 companies, UN agencies, even local governments here in the Philippines, because we actually have laws that requires companies to employ talents with disabilities, but talents are not available. And the reason that they're not available because they're not out there. Our education system did not prepare them for employment. So what we did is we told these students that join our training, you don't have to pay anything up front, but soon as you get a job, you'll sponsor another scholar in the future through our paid forward program. And they said, deal. And then we talked to the companies and we told them, like, instead of paying, 20 to 30% of the annual salary of your staff for your recruitment costs, why don't you sponsor scholarship to our scholars? And then you get the priority to actually hire them in your company for free. And that is 40 to 60% cost savings in your recruitment process. And they said, deal. And through this cross-subsidy and paid-forward model, we're able to create a sustainable program that then allows any type of disability to join the workforce and work for these companies. And if our graduates are hired by, as operations manager for companies like Microsoft, then it tells a good story for a local small and medium enterprises here in the Philippines that is also possible for them.
Interesting.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think that we have to stop thinking that something isn't possible just because we haven't seen it. I mean, that's the very concept of innovation, is to change the present status quo. And well, which also makes our work hard. Sometimes it's like, how many rejections today? Like 10 or something. But you just keep working at it. And it's like